The Art of Thinking, Clearly by Rolf Dobelli, is a fascinating exploration of cognitive biases and logical fallacies that impair human judgment. In 99 short chapters, Dobelli presents a comprehensive guide to understanding the common mental traps people fall into, offering practical advice on how to avoid these pitfalls and make better decisions in everyday life. Each chapter focuses on a specific bias or logical error, illustrating it with examples and drawing from psychological research, behavioral economics, and real-world observations. The premise. At the core of the book is the idea that human thinking is inherently flawed due to evolutionary traits that were beneficial to survival but aren't well suited to the complexities of modern society. While humans have evolved to be efficient at making quick decisions in environments where information is scarce, in today's information-rich world, these same instincts often lead to poor judgment. Dobelli's goal is to highlight these cognitive errors, or systematic deviations from rationality, in order to help readers recognize and overcome them. Key biases and fallacies. 1. Survivorship bias. Survivorship bias occurs when people focus on successful outcomes and ignore the failures. For example, people often idolize entrepreneurs like Steve Jobs and Bill Gates, believing they achieved success purely through hard work and genius. However, the countless entrepreneurs who failed are forgotten. Survivorship bias distorts our understanding of success by emphasizing the winners without acknowledging the invisible failures. To counter this, Dobelli suggests that we must consider the full picture, including the numerous cases of failure, before drawing conclusions. 2. Confirmation bias. Confirmation bias is the tendency to seek out information that supports one's pre-existing beliefs and ignore information that contradicts them. This leads to a narrow understanding of the world and reinforces misconceptions. For instance, if someone believes a particular stock will perform well, they will only pay attention to news that supports this view. To avoid confirmation bias, Dobelli advises making a conscious effort to seek out opposing viewpoints and question one's own assumptions. 3. Authority bias. Authority bias is the inclination to overvalue the opinions of authority figures, regardless of whether their expertise is relevant to the subject at hand. This can lead to poor decisions, as people defer to figures of authority even when their advice is not backed by evidence. Dobelli highlights the importance of evaluating information critically, rather than blindly following the opinions of perceived experts. 4. Sunk cost fallacy. The sunk cost fallacy occurs when people continue investing in a losing proposition simply because they have already invested so much in it. A common example is someone who keeps pouring money into a failing business because they don't want their earlier investments to go to waste. However, this thinking is irrational because the past investment cannot be recovered, and continuing to invest in a failing endeavor only leads to greater losses. Dobelli urges readers to cut their losses and make decisions based on future potential rather than past commitments. 5. Social proof. Social proof refers to the tendency to follow the actions of others, assuming that if many people are doing something, it must be correct or beneficial. This herd mentality can lead to disastrous consequences, as seen in stock market bubbles or trends in fashion or technology. Dobelli suggests questioning whether the crowd's behavior is rational before following suit, and to be aware of the power of social influence in shaping decisions. 6. Base rate neglect. Base rate neglect is the tendency to ignore general information in favor of specific, anecdotal evidence. For example, when told that a person is quiet and enjoys reading, many people might assume that person is more likely to be a librarian than a salesperson, even though there are far more salespeople in the world than librarians. The failure to consider the base rate, the statistical likelihood of an event, leads to erroneous conclusions. Dobelli recommends always factoring in base rates when making decisions based on probabilities. 7. The availability bias. Availability bias is the tendency to overestimate the likelihood of events that come easily to mind, often because they are recent, dramatic, or emotional. For instance, after seeing news reports of airplane crashes, people may irrationally fear flying, even though air travel is statistically safer than driving. This bias distorts our perception of risk, leading us to make decisions based on vivid memories rather than objective facts. To counter availability bias, Dobelli suggests looking at the actual statistics rather than relying on gut feelings or media reports. 8. The gambler's fallacy. The gambler's fallacy is the belief that if something happens frequently within a given period, it is less likely to happen in the future, or vice versa. For example, after flipping a coin and getting heads 5 times in a row, one might wrongly assume that tails is due to appear next. In reality, each flip of the coin is independent, and the chances of getting heads or tails remain 50-50ths. Dobelli points out that this fallacy is common in gambling and other areas where randomness is involved, and it can lead to poor decision-making. Practical applications. Dobelli's book is filled with practical insights that can be applied to various aspects of life, from investing and business decisions to relationships and personal growth. His emphasis on the importance of thinking rationally and avoiding mental shortcuts resonates across multiple domains. Business and investing. Many of the biases Dobelli describes, such as survivorship bias, confirmation bias, and sunk cost fallacy, are particularly relevant in the business and investment worlds. By recognizing and avoiding these biases, individuals can make more informed and objective decisions. Personal life. In personal life, cognitive biases like social proof, authority bias, and availability bias can influence important choices, such as whom to marry, where to live, and how to spend one's time and money. Dobelli's advice to question assumptions and consider the broader context can help individuals lead more thoughtful and fulfilling lives. Decision-making. One of the most significant takeaways from The Art of Thinking Clearly is the importance of slowing down the decision-making process. Rather than making impulsive choices based on instinct or emotion, Dobelli encourages readers to reflect on their thinking patterns, examine their assumptions, and gather as much relevant information as possible before acting. Conclusion. The Art of Thinking Clearly offers a valuable framework for understanding and overcoming the cognitive biases that cloud our judgment. Dobelli's straightforward, engaging style makes complex psychological concepts accessible and relatable. By raising awareness of these biases and providing practical strategies for avoiding them, the book empowers readers to think more rationally and make better decisions in all areas of life. While no one can completely eliminate cognitive biases, recognizing them is the first step toward clearer, more logical thinking.